like, okay, this is some deep work that I first need to do for myself. And so then going on my own healing journey and unpacking those old stories and traumas, I started to recognize like, oh, like my PCOS, my challenges in my relationship, my story of or belief of not being enough, it's all connected to what was passed down to me.
Hey, and welcome to today's conversation. I'm your host, Deidre Sirianni, and I am super pumped to be inviting one of my good friends on the show today, Dr. Sonya Jensen. She is an incredible naturopathic doctor that specializes in detoxing and also hormones. And she's got an incredible book coming out, and I am so excited to be having her on the show today to talk more about how our hormones are connected to our emotions and how our hormones are also connected to our relationships. She's got a new book coming out that's called Heal Your Hormones and Reclaim Yourself. So really excited to be inviting her onto the show today. Let's dive into today's conversation and tell us a little bit about the book that is coming out, Sonya. And thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's really excited to have this conversation. Always so great to connect with you. So the book is called Heal Your Hormones, Reclaim Yourself. So it's essentially connecting the dots between like hormonal chaos, emotional overload, and relationship pain and struggles that we have. And it's just creating awareness on how connected all those things are.
And I love this conversation already because it's like everything is connected. And I think that so much of, the world that we live in, North America, it's very much based on like, no, it's in a box over here. It's in a box over here. It's in a box over here. And you're really taking that holistic approach of everything is connected. So before we get into all the questions I have for you today, because I have some juicy ones and some specific questions of things that I've noticed with my hormones as a woman that's 36 years old. And I'm like, what the heck's going on here? We need your help. We need your help, Sonya. What is your story? Why are you doing this
Yeah.
work? Like, what got you into this work of really wanting to focus on women's hormones and the
Yeah.
interconnectedness of all of this?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty long story, so I'll kind of shorten it for the
Perfect.
listeners today. I think I've always been interested in the human body. Like I always knew that even growing up, I knew I would do something where I was helping others, and I didn't really know what that looked like. And going through different training from like cell biology to then, okay, maybe I'll do massage therapy because I want to work with others. And then I stumbled on naturopathic medicine by accident, actually. So I think something was really pulling me towards this type of work. And it was through naturopathic medicine when you start to understand that in order to help another, you have to do the work on yourself. And it really was in my that third year when I was in clinic and I started to see women in their 40s and 50s and talking about the life that they had lived, that they had, and the choices they wish they had made or didn't make. And this one in particular was talking about her relationship and going through a divorce at that time. And I'm like, wow, she's like a mirror for me. And it really forced me to look at my own life and understand my own traumas and my stresses and the choices that I had made leading up to that point. And fast forward, I ended up going through a divorce, went and traveled the world, ended up with my now husband, Dr. Nick, that you know.
We love Nick.
And
Nick's great.
you, yeah, you love Nick. And even then I thought, okay, in practice, I'm probably going to do physical medicine because I love physical medicine. And it just, day after day, there'll be women in front of me talking about their hormones, talking about their struggles. And I'm like, okay, this is some deep work that I first need to do for myself. And so then going on my own healing journey and unpacking those old stories and traumas, I started to recognize like, oh, like my PCOS, my challenges in my relationship, my story of or belief of not being enough, it's all connected to what was passed down to me, but also to what I experienced as a child. And so when I started doing that healing work and started seeing this in my practice, women come to me and we may talk about fatigue and anemia and hot flashes and weight gain and infertility. But at the end of the day, there's always this emotional story, whether it's the emotion they're experiencing in that moment because of their symptom or what they've been carrying, and that's been feeding that cycle of their hormonal challenge. And so I just feel like we all need someone that can talk about this so that we don't feel alone. I think that's really the biggest reason why I wanted to do this work.
I freaking love this so much. And I'm like, I want to like dissect things. So, what is PCOS? What does that
Yes.
mean? I've heard of it before. What exactly is that, and how does someone know if maybe they are experiencing that?
Yeah, it's polycystic ovarian syndrome, and there's various symptoms that one might experience, maybe amenorrhea, so like losing your cycle or irregular cycles. If you do an ultrasound, you may have cysts on your ovaries, or you may not.
Hmm.
If you do blood work, you may have high LH levels, which is luteinizing hormone, but also high testosterone. So women may, have hair growing on their chins or places where you wouldn't think you would
Hmm.
have hair, and anxiety often follows it, and also some form of like metabolic disorders. So it might be like insulin resistance or like weight gain around the belly, and doing all the right things but you're not losing weight. So those might be just some clues
Hmm.
that you might be experiencing this. And I do think it's overdiagnosed as well because, I think someone listening might be like, check, 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 but it doesn't mean you actually have it. So I think doing the work and like tracking your cycle and understanding it of what normal is, quote unquote, for you
Hmm.
helps you understand. And then you can ask those questions when you go to the doctor of like, okay, what blood work do I need? What hormone testing would help me understand if I have PCOS?
I love this. I actually just got blood work done today to get all my hormones tested. So I'm like, yay, I'm on the right path.
Yeah.
Um, so with this, like with PCOS, were you able to heal yourself of that? Was this like more of an emotional piece for you? Like, what was your journey of really, understanding your
Yeah.
symptoms personally?
Yeah, I think in my early years, I recognized it was my lifestyle, it was how I was eating, how I was drinking. In my 20s, like all the various things that we do at that stage that was impacting my physical health. But
Mhm.
when I started to really understand, and I changed all those things, I went to naturopathic school, I started eating differently, I stopped drinking, I'm like doing all the right things, and yet I'm still having symptoms. And I started to recognize how much resentment I have been carrying. And so I don't have PCOS, but I still have a dermoid cyst on my right ovary that my cysts were gone. Like when I had children, I had a C-section for my firstborn, and the nurse had told me at that point, there's a tiny little cyst on your ovary. So I'm like, okay, that's, I'll take care of that. I know what to do.
Mhm.
And fast forward now, as I'm doing more of my work and really mulching at the trauma that I had, I think, suppressed for many, many years, all of a sudden now, and not all of a sudden, it grew over time. I have this cyst that, for several months I actually thought was maybe cancerous, and kind of went through that journey. And what I started to recognize over time as I'm healing, it's like, wow, like I just carry so much resentment towards myself, not
Mm,
even towards others. It was really towards myself. And when I started unpacking that and again seeing that in other women in front of me, I was like,
mhm.
this is that missing piece. Like, this is that
Oh,
piece that
wow.
I still need to dive further into.
How did you get to the point of knowing that you had resentment towards yourself versus other? Because I know a lot of the time when we're, and I say collectively, in an
Yeah.
emotion or in something, sometimes it's hard to know where
Yeah.
it's coming from. So, what was kind of
Yeah.
your personal process? And I love that we're talking about trauma because I feel like every time I talk about anything, it always comes back to trauma. So, I love
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, well, it's everything because it frames so much of how you do life.
Hmm.
And without you knowing, because it's in that subconscious space. And when you start to recognize that, then you notice your own patterns. And so
Hmm.
that was the pattern that I noticed. Because that I think in the beginning when I was doing my healing, it was like that other,
Oh, for
right? It's
sure.
it's,
This
it's mom.
person did me
Yeah.
wrong. This
Yeah.
ex-husband, this
That's
parent.
right. That's right. Like
They
that
do that.
parent, they didn't love me the way I needed to be loved. They didn't see me. They didn't hear me. And all of that may be true.
Right.
But now it's mine.
Right.
And yeah, old relationships or what had happened to me when I was a child. And, all of that's like that person did that to me. Yes, that's true. And now how do I process this? How do I shift from this so it's not controlling me and it's not navigating my story anymore? And so as I started to do that, I started to see, even in different scenarios, when I think about growing up and when I didn't use my voice when I could have,
Hmm.
or when I think the biggest one was when I was a child and there's like, I think you and I have already talked about this before. I was sexually molested. And at that time, I carried for so long this guilt that I knew what was happening was wrong because I think I was at that age, like 7, 8, where I knew this was weird, I knew this was wrong, and but I didn't speak up, and
Hmm.
I don't, and nothing came of it up until now.
Hmm.
And so I just carried so much of that guilt and shame and resentment towards me because I didn't speak up for that little girl. I didn't
Hmm.
speak up for me. And so I started to recognize, yes, I might be angry with these people that did the thing, that did the wrong thing, but it's the resentment that I have towards myself that needs to be healed.
Oh, that's so powerful. I'm getting goosebumps. And one thing that I really want to go deeper on, just because this is like so, I'm becoming so much more aware of what this word means. I mean, there's two
Mm,
things I want to dive into, and I definitely have way more questions. I'm like, let's go into the emotional piece. Let's just go really deep into the waters, okay, Sonia?
mm,
Um, but it's shame and shame. I never really understood what shame meant for so long. I think
yeah,
Brene Brown and there were other people talking about
yeah,
shame, 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 and I'm like, I don't understand. Like for me, I was like, oh, I did something wrong, as in like I made a mistake. That's how I used to identify shame. And as of just recently, I'm surprised, but just in like the last year, I'm like, oh no, shame to me, my understanding of it, I want to hear how it is for you is shame to me is something that's wrong with me. I'm defective. And I was like, oh shit. I'm like, I've totally carried that most of my life. And I'm like,
yes.
oh, I understand it now. So I'm curious what that brings up for you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like something's wrong with me,
Mm-hmm.
my who I am at my core, that there's something wrong there instead of the action. Like guilt, I think is associated more with like the action that we may have done that maybe is against our values or
Right.
something like that. But I think when it comes to shame, it's like you at your core, there's something wrong with you is what that's the story that's playing at that moment.
I feel too like sexual, if you've been sexually assaulted or raped or anything
Yeah.
like that, I feel like that is such an emotion that sticks with women who
Mm,
have experienced this because I've
mm,
had different situations in my life where I was raped when I was 19 and then some other
mm,
things happened in my, more adult life. And I'm like, oh, like, why would that happen to me? There must be something wrong with me.
mhm.
And so, what are some of the steps to begin to shift out of shame if
Yeah.
we're getting into a cycle of that? Because I think that this is something that I want to say all women are in because I don't know any woman that's not like this.
Yeah. I
Right?
know. Yeah, I know. It's sad. It's sad when you look at the statistics and stuff too, and yet, it's something we're still not super comfortable talking about. So I think having these kinds of conversations can open
Hmm.
that door for women. And I think it does look differently for everyone when it comes to their journey and their awareness of, wow, like that frames so much of my identity and my choices and who I think I am and how I'm supposed to behave. And that in itself translated imprinted into my body and my physiology. So, like, that's changed because of it. So, when you start to recognize that shame exists, I think that's the first step is the awareness of like, this isn't guilt, this is actual shame that's like changed my core being of who I think I am, is recognizing that first. And then being able to, I think, speak it. A friend of mine said that to me. It's like when you speak it, you take the power away from shame
Hmm.
because right now shame has so much power. So
Hmm.
what do we do to, disable that power from shame is to be able to speak it. And I don't want to say, I know some people say own the story, which yes, there's like truth to that you want to own it. But when something like that has happened to you, I think owning it can sometimes feel like, um, because some people can get into a space of like having almost gratitude for their experiences and learning from it and all
Hmm.
that. I don't think I'm there yet.
Right.
I don't know if I will be.
Hmm.
But I think I can change my relationship to it. I can change my relationship to what happened to see what I've learned from it and how I've grown from it. And so I think the first step is the awareness, and then it's the discernment of being able to recognize when I'm having a thought about myself or if I'm choosing an action. And this action could be like choosing a donut versus, a carrot, or choosing to work out, not working out, choosing a relationship that isn't right for you and having boundaries and saying no. So that's all of that discernment of like, okay, am I making this choice from that narrator or am I making this choice from who I am today? So
Mm,
having discernment, I think, is the second step. And
hmm
then it's like the actions, changing the pattern, right? Pattern disruption, action, pattern disruption. And from that, transformation comes. But in between there, there's so many nuances, right? If we're carrying that shame in our body, your body might be speaking to you in symptoms. Maybe that's speaking to you and like feeling completely burnt out. So now maybe I need to work on my adrenals. I need to support my hormones and my immune system so I feel strong enough to actually face shame like I need to. I know that was a
hmm
long circular answer.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I love going deep into these conversations. And yeah, I just feel like so many women carry shame and also survivors of, sexual assault and all of that. So I really appreciate you sharing that process. And yeah, you said something interesting. You're like, some people say that you should own the story, and you're like, well, I'm not there yet, right? And then the gratitude piece. I remember, we'll just talk about personal development for like 2 seconds here. But I remember going to Landmark, okay? The big Landmark.
Yeah.
It's a personal development kind of thing that a lot of people go to. It's big in Vancouver. And I remember like, expressing something that happened and then bypassing the pain, bypassing the shame, all these things in the empowerment stage. And I had no idea that I had so much deeper work to do. And it's really interesting because even when I did my TEDx on trauma and all these things, it was good to express it, but there was also a vulnerability hangover. Like when we go to share our stories or share our truth, and if we are in the space of leadership, like yourself in your book and everything that you do, it takes a certain amount of courage and also really learning how to take care of yourself as you get into those spaces of sharing the story and then after sharing the story, which is,
Yeah.
the nervous system needs some love there, right?
Oh my gosh, so much love. And I was having this conversation with myself this morning of like, I think I'm 46 now. Now I feel ready to heal.
Amazing.
And I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day because, when you're in that hyper vigilant stage or state because of the experience that you have, so you're just always kind of on, you learn to compartmentalize. You know how you were
Hmm
talking about in the beginning, how
Yeah.
just in general we do that as humans, and you learn to step up when there's chaos. You learn to like focus, you learn to be productive, you learn to like be the one that everyone can rely on.
hmm
And then when you start healing, it's like all of a sudden all that armor starts to dissolve and the emotions like right there. So in this past year, I've had two experiences where I've been in a situation that brought up old stories, that brought up old hurts. And normally I could just push that aside, be in the moment, be there for the people that I'm there for, and just go on with it and
hmm
manage whatever later. I couldn't, I couldn't. The tears couldn't stop. So I had to step out of that space to talk to myself to understand like what is actually going on. Like I don't even have control anymore. Just the other day at my parents' house, I had a moment like that. And my mom didn't even say anything. She was talking about how I didn't call her back
Right.
and how the other dog, my sister calls her back right away, even though she's also busy. It was just that one line, and I don't know what it created in my psyche and my emotions, but I had to step away, go to the bathroom, and actually let the tears flow.
hmm
But before, I probably would have just held on to all of that and created a story and validated an old story and would have stuck with it. So I feel like when the armor dissolves, and maybe because I'm in perimenopause, the hormones aren't there anymore to like give me that armor, it's just then the healing can begin. Because then we're
mm
not playing that identity anymore or that role that we picked up because of the
hmm
hypervigilance.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, and I'm sure your mom's an amazing woman. So this is not anything against your mom, but
Yeah.
like, oh, you don't get back to me, but your sister does. So even because the armor's not there,
Yeah.
perimenopause or not, you're in this healing space of you're very receptive to what's going on beneath the surface. You're like, that actually really hurt me, and I'm really
Mhm.
sensitive, and I don't want to be compared to someone else, and like I want to feel like I'm enough, and I want to feel understood. Like there's this part of us underneath of all of the armor that we carry to protect ourselves that's like, oh, that actually hurts, you know? So,
Yeah.
did you have a conversation with your mom after or?
Oh my gosh, no. So here's the healing that still needs to happen. I did my first, like, okay, the 5-year-old showed up,
Right,
said a few things that needed to be said,
right,
and it actually kind of made them go quiet and then stepped away. So it's
right.
like,
Yeah.
in hindsight, it's like, yes, there's conversation that still need to happen. And
Hmm.
it really showed me that there still is work in that realm that needs to be done.
Hmm. The
Yeah.
vulnerability is tough, especially as like someone who is like you're a leader, you're
Yeah.
successful, you're doing all these things. And I love having these conversations and sharing stories, because I think a lot of the time from the outside in, people perceive us as in like, oh, they've got it figured out. Oh,
Yes.
because they're teaching this, they're done. It's like, no, we're actually like in it
Yes.
and
Teaching it because we need it.
it's our own medicine. We're like, you
Yeah.
guys, I might be a couple steps ahead of you, but you know what I mean? I'm in it with you. So I really appreciate you sharing that story.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's funny, after the book was done and like reading it again, I'm like, wow, I'm like in it. Like this
Yeah.
book I wrote was for me. And
Hmm.
I think that is how we heal. Like we do end up teaching and sharing and, holding space for others so that we also can be that medicine for ourselves.
And your book, I know for me, when I wrote a book and it was like an initiation into whatever I was teaching, I always find
Yeah.
that. Do you find that too? Like there's an
Yeah.
initiation that is
Yes.
happening as this book is starting to be birthed
Yeah.
into the world. I'm so excited for you. When you told me you were writing this book, I was like, I think I cried. Think I was like, oh my gosh, Sonia, this is so exciting.
Yeah, I know you've been so supportive.
It's so amazing. So I have another area that I really want to dive into. So we talked a little bit about PCOS, and this is essentially like cysts on the ovaries, and there's other symptoms that are involved. When you said that, as soon as you said cysts, the first intuition that came through me, and you said resentment, I got like rage, like unexpressed rage. And something that's been coming through quite a bit for me in the last like year or two, I used to never feel angry. I wasn't allowed to as a child. I was always like the nice girl, like everything is great. And like I self-sacrifice, like I just do everything to make everyone else happy. But then I really started to tune into like anger and sacred rage in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and yeah, you were a speaker at the Awakening Her Summit. So we talked a little bit about that. What are your thoughts on like processing rage? Because it's not
Yes.
something that's talked about a lot for women. And there's a lot of shame around even
Yes.
feeling rage, right?
Yes. Yeah, like you said, it's like we have that identity or play that role of like not speaking up, being the good girl, people pleaser, like all the things that we gather so that we can survive our environment and still
Hmm.
belong and still feel some level of love or connection. And so what I have noticed, I'll kind of use myself as an example, as I've been moving through perimenopause and going back to the hormones dissolving, it's like it's instant. It's not even like I'm ruminating anymore and then the rage is like getting stuck inside. It's like instant. Here it is, top of mind, and you're going to experience it with me. This is my poor partner, right? And my kids sometimes. And
Yeah.
so then we have that backtrack and we have that conversation. But I think rage and anger, especially anger, it's such a healthy emotion to help us step into action because it's reminding us that there's healing that needs to be done and we have
Mhm.
every right to step into that healing space. And
Mhm.
what's interesting about anger and rage, so there was actually a study done over a couple of hundred women they took, and they were measuring their immune cells and their cytokines, so their pro-inflammatory cells, and looking at different emotions like sadness, grief, anger, rage, all of that. So anger and rage actually produce interleukin 6, which is a pro-inflammatory cytokine. So it literally creates inflammation in your body. And
If
then
it's
what
unprocessed, if it's
if
like
it's
not,
unprocessed,
okay.
yes. If it's imprinted, unprocessed. And then what they did was they gave these women support, different levels of support, like community, and just were there to like hear them. Every single woman, her interleukin 6 went down. So her
I love
inflammation
that.
started to go down. That is how connected how we feel is to our bodies and that relationship and that language that they're speaking together. So again, I do think rage and anger are very healthy because it helps us step into action.
I love that. I love that there's there's studies and science that backs this because I feel like, my Nana, my old Italian Nana, she's not around anymore, but she was spicy. She just say the thing and then everyone would be happy the next day, but she would just fully express herself. And I just feel like today in North America, women in so many ways have been told it's not okay to be angry or, be a disruptor and all of this. And what you're saying is just validating. It's so important to express your anger and find healthy ways to do that.
That's right. Yeah, you can channel it and be productive with that anger.
Hmm.
And I think that voice, like we're so used to suppressing it. And, Gabor Mate's work with when your body says no and his like view on women and illness, it's like autoimmune disease, like who gets more autoimmune? It's women.
Hmm.
And it's through this like suppression of our emotion and lack of expression that the body then has to take the toll and then it starts to yell and express for us.
I love this. I feel like we're just like hanging out in person right now. So
I know, it's so fun.
stoked. I'm like, I missed you. Um, when we talk, so we're talking about emotions.
Yeah.
Now let's talk a little bit about perimenopause. I am not in I can't believe you're 10 years older than me. That blows my mind. You look like you're younger than me. So
No,
whatever
I
you're doing,
don't.
whatever Sonya's doing, I'm doing. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, you do this, I do this. Oh, you think
Yeah.
this is good, I do this. I'm like, I just want to be like Sonya when I'm older, okay? Um, but when we look at hormones and cycle tracking and all of that, I used to hear people talk about this all the time years ago,
Mm,
and I internally didn't know what
mm,
they were talking about. I was like, these women like are too
mm.
flowery for me. Again, I was more in my masculine. I wasn't like open and I wasn't in tune
Yep.
with my body. But I just started tracking.
Yep.
I cycle the last 2 years. And one thing I really know to be true is right before my cycle, I have no patience. And then the day after it ends, I feel like, this is an exaggeration. This isn't true. I'm not going to hurt myself. I feel like I have no life purpose and I don't want to live. Like I actually feel
Mm,
like my life is over. And this just was like so many days ago where I was like, I feel
mm,
depressed. And I'm like, okay, it just
mm,
ended, mindset shift. What are
mm,
some things that we can do if we
mm,
are
mm.
tracking our cycle to support our symptoms?
Yeah.
And is that normal?
Yeah, yeah, yes. So I think I love what you shared because that is what brings awareness to the ability to discern whether how you're feeling is related to those ebbs and flows and ups and downs, or is this, something you need medical attention and you need support with your mental health. Like it
Mhm.
can really help you discern that. And so to understand like what's happening in the different stages of your cycle is so important. So when we're bleeding, or so I'll talk about right before the bleed, like you were saying. So right before our bleed, our hormones tank. Both progesterone and estrogen, they decline. And so if they're declining at a very fast rate, we're going to feel those symptoms even more. So it's normal to feel some level of discomfort, right? We're about to shed and we're about to release this blood. And so the body will step into more fatigue, maybe a little bit of brain fog, maybe some like sleep disturbance. Like there might be some of that going on. But those are also clues to your hormones declining faster than they need to.
Okay.
And so, for example, estrogen is the hormone that activates serotonin and also helps dopamine. So, those are two neurotransmitters. Serotonin makes us feel happy, and dopamine gives us that reward, that joy, that confidence that we need.
Hmm.
So, what should happen on day 3 of our cycle, estrogen starts to go up. So, what you should feel in that first half, right after you bleed up until ovulation, you should actually feel the most confidence you feel throughout the whole month and
Hmm.
like ready to go, energized, feeling confident, all of that. If you're not, to me, that's a clue. If you're feeling most down after your period, that means your estrogen needs to be checked. That means
Okay.
we need to support your estrogen.
Good to
And
know.
yeah, and then we ovulate, and that's usually when testosterone goes up. So we're supposed to feel a bit of that mojo, like libido should go up. You should feel a bit more attractive, attracted to others, and just more connected, more creative.
Mm.
And then, estrogen declines at that point, but then comes back up a little bit, and so does progesterone in our last half. And then
Mhm.
we should feel really internal, like really grounded and calm, and just want to nest a little bit and just support and nourish our body. if we're feeling irritable, if we're feeling anxious. So progesterone helps GABA, the neurotransmitter that basically helps the body and the mind feel calm.
Mm,
So if we don't get enough of that progesterone, we're not getting enough of that GABA, feeling irritable, feeling more rage. And then if we don't have enough estrogen in that second half, also maybe more sadness and more
mm,
depression.
mm,
So when we start to track and understand, okay, well, how am I feeling? What's normal for me? Okay, so now I've traveled. Oh, now I've eaten a little bit differently. Now there's been this other stress, work stress, whatever, and it's impacted how I'm feeling throughout that cycle. Then I know what tools I need to support those
mm.
specific hormones in different phases.
Okay, I love that. So I'm so happy that I'm getting my hormones tested because I'm like, I think it's necessary. And apparently that's not normal. So good to know.
Yeah, and again, your normal might be different, and there might be something going on that particular month or the previous month
Mm-hmm.
that's giving you clues. So I always say, like, go back to the patterns of thoughts that are coming up. They're there for a
Hmm.
reason. So you've
Hmm.
been in that luteal phase, the last half of your cycle. If there's a theme that's coming up every month with
Hmm.
your relationship, with thoughts about yourself, that's a clue. Like your hormones, they're basically your hormones and your emotions, I feel like, are the language of your soul, right? So they're trying to tell you something. Your
Hmm.
body's whispering or yelling something to you. So this is a time to listen.
I love that. And so that would be during the bleed or before in the luteal.
Luteal phase is before the bleed. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the time to get internal,
Yeah.
journal, and look at the previous month and our patterns and like what's showing
Yes.
up. I notice for me, this is something like when I'm ovulating, if I'm irritated when I'm ovulating, I'm like, okay, this really needs to change.
Yeah.
If it's like if I'm because normally I feel amazing. I'm like, I feel so
Yeah.
good. But if something's
Yeah.
re bothering me, really bothering me, then I'm like, oh, this is a hard no or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's you tapping into that intuition
yeah.
too. It's like, everything that we feel, there's a reason for it, but it's
Mhm.
trying to understand the reason because there's just so much noise in the world. That's difficult. So we have to
Mhm.
quiet down a bit and understand ourselves, and then we can read those messages more easily.
Love that. So when we talk about, okay, so we talked about rage, we talked about PCOS, we talked about our emotions, our hormones. Now let's talk about relationships and how it
Yeah.
kind of connects it all, because I know you talk about this in your book.
Yes, for sure. So years ago, I'm going to say, okay, around 2013. So we really started implementing hormones in 2012. Like we got extra training and, we really started making it a part of our practice. And I was working with this woman and, it was the typical stuff that she came in with, like hot flashes, night sweats, just irritability, not being able to sleep. So we tackled her hormones, did some emotional work, but I think at that time I wasn't at that place where I felt comfortable taking women there because I hadn't gone there myself,
Mhm.
but did some surface level things and referred her out to a counselor. And then Nick was seeing her husband. So treated them all good, didn't see them for a while. And then a friend of theirs comes by to do some IVs. And he kind of paused and he looked at me and he's like, "Do you realize that you guys saved a marriage?" And I was like, "No." Like, what do you mean? He's like, "Well, my friends that you saw before they came to see you, they were at the brink of divorce.
Mm,
And after seeing you, after they discovered more about themselves and healed, their relationship's better than ever." And that's when I was like, okay, there's something to this.
hmm.
So how we feel, how our hormones are communicating, the messages the hormones are getting, the stories we're carrying, all of that is impacting how we feel about ourselves and how we feel in our bodies, which is then translating on how we're perceiving our relationships, our conversations, and how we feel. Like divorce rates go up for women between ages of 45 to 55. They're the highest at that point.
Hmm.
Why? Your hormones are changing drastically. So the veil that you were wearing is now dissolved and gone. So whether that creates more clarity of, what needs to happen, or maybe it's going to muck things up a little bit more. So now we need to learn discernment to understand how this emotion and hormone is affecting my relationship.
Hmm. I love that. So when we look at perimenopause, when does that start for women? Is that typically in your 40s? And what are some of the symptoms and some of
Yeah.
the things that you'd recommend that women start doing to start supporting themselves with their
Yeah.
hormones?
Yeah, it can start as early as our 30s,
Hmm.
mid 30s, and it's usually about 10 years-ish before menopause.
Okay.
And so early signs, and again, it's so nuanced because it's so dependent on the story you're carrying into that stage. You know,
Mm,
what were traumas and stressors and experiences and nutrition, were you on birth control? Like all those things will determine this transition in perimenopause and how smooth it is.
hmm.
So it may start off for some women as like irregular cycles. So she might have one every 15 days all of a sudden to all of a sudden every 60 days. Like it's starting to lengthen because her estrogen is declining. So basically what's happening in perimenopause is estrogen's up 1 month and down another, up and down. So 1 month she might feel amazing and she's on track, and the next month all of a sudden everything is feeling really heavy and chaotic. And so there's some ups and downs there. Some women will feel the night sweats, the hot flashes. Usually it's the insomnia, like not being able to either fall asleep or stay asleep and up at 3 a.m. not
Mm,
being able to fall back asleep. So that's like a big one. Weight gain around the belly, even though you're eating the same, you're moving the same, you're doing all those things, but the fat deposition changes from the hips to the belly all of a sudden because of that estrogen. We become more insulin resistant, not being able to process sugar like we did before. And then the moods. So there could be like extreme sadness, extreme anxiety, fear about things that you never had before, like fear about before. So it can vary for every woman, but those are just some of the more typical things that women will feel. I mean, there's tinnitus, there's like itchy ears, there's like skin gets really dry, hair starts to fall out because estrogen like plumps up the follicle, but it starts to shrink once your
mm,
estrogen declines, dry eyes. I mean, there's so many that can show up, but really, if you're tracking your cycle, you know you're normal, then you know when you're off normal. And then you can discern, okay, was it because, like I said before, did I travel this month? Am I really stressed out?
mm,
Did I not eat as well? Maybe I'm not nourishing my body. Like we can start to understand the why behind the discomfort. And
hmm.
so, to your question of like, well, what do women do? Testing can be difficult because the hormones are going up and down, especially with blood because they come out in pulsation. So, I usually run a urine test to look at metabolites to understand what the hormones are doing in her body, and
Hmm.
then looking at the symptoms, really. And so, some women do really well with BHRT, like bioidentical hormone therapy in perimenopause. Some women do well just with introducing some herbs that are estrogenic or help their progesterone, nutrition support. So you're eating for your hormones, like you're upping your protein, you're increasing that healthy fat, you're lowering like the sugary carbs, like the breads and the cookies and all the things. So there's definitely lots of things. And then what I love to implement are like daily rituals, things that you do in your mornings and your evenings that help you feel grounded. So for me, it's nervous system number one. Because
Mm,
if we can support your nervous system, that will translate to your hormones.
mm,
That's a
powerful.
long answer.
No, I love all of it. I'm like, I can't wait to like get your book and like go through all of the pieces
Yeah.
and implement and
Yeah.
everything else. Wow, I feel like I'm like, what do I have to ask you next? There's so much. Okay. So we talked about the emotions, we talked about the relationship, we talked about the hormones. Um, what are some things that women should make sure that they're absolutely not doing, regardless of their age, to support their
Mm.
hormones? Are there specific, like, do not do this, do not, because there's always trends, there's always these health trends of, drink this, do that. Are there any
Yeah.
trends or anything that's happening right now where you're like, if I had a megaphone and I could tell as many people as possible, what would that trend be that you think is like really not great? And what is something that everyone should be doing?
Yeah, so it just goes back to the nuances. I speak in nuances, so I'm not very clickbaity. Um,
Come on, let's do
uh,
clickbait. But like, just
uh,
joking.
I think everything you have to take with a grain of salt. And first step is understanding your body. So, like for example, fasting, amazing, right? I implement it. I get my patients to implement it. But is it right for you? Is it right for your season of life? Is it right for your where you are in your cycle
Hmm.
and your goals? So understanding that is important. Other things are on creatine. I mean, that's like really shown up a lot in social media right now. And right now, the studies, everything is actually validating that it can be really supportive for women for brain health, especially if you're taking around 10 grams a day. And so I think there's definitely trends that can create awareness around some missing pieces like that. Protein, we're talking a lot about protein right now with women, which I also think is really, really important, and weightlifting. That is something that I've done from when I was like 14 years old. So for me, it's always been a no-brainer to lift weights.
Hmm.
But for women to understand how beneficial it is, especially as our muscles are going to decline as we age, it's called sarcopenia.
Hmm.
So one hormone we didn't really touch on is testosterone for women and how important it is for libido, but it's also important for motivation, for purpose, for drive. It's an antidepressant. And as we age, starting age 25, it starts to decline, and it's really declining in perimenopause.
Mm.
So one way to lift your testosterone up and make sure you have that muscle mass is to lift weights. So I think that's like definitely a do for every woman for your bone health, muscle health, and your moods and your brain health. Like I can't tell you how many times, I've been disciplined since I was 14, 15 to wake up in the morning and work out because movement really is my medicine. But there's days where I'm like, oh, okay, I don't really want to go. But the minute I'm in the gym, I'm doing my thing, it's like it changes everything, my outlook on life and really shifts my mood. So I think movement is definitely a do for sure. So in the book, I actually created this quiz for women to understand their hormonal identity. I think that can help you understand your do's and don'ts,
Mm.
because it'll give you an idea of where you are right now. Because it's like I said, it's nuanced. You might be right now a mom of like young kids and not sleeping because of that. So it's going to be harder for you to like navigate some of these other trends and changes. So like what can you do to simplify things for yourself? And those might be those daily rituals. You might be that anxious overachiever that, you're in your career and that's your focus right now, but because of that, you're having digestive issues, not sleeping, and your hormones are off. It'll give you some ideas on what to do there. So, yeah, I know it's not maybe the answer you were looking for.
You totally said some
Okay.
good things. You're like, hey, creatine is the rage. And you know what?
Yeah.
There's some backing
Yeah.
here. Thank you. I reminder for me to take creatine. I just worked out
Yeah.
before this recording. So
Yeah.
yay.
Even
Um,
myself this morning before I got on, I'm like, okay, what can I do, to have that mental clarity? I'm like,
yeah.
yep, my creatine, I gotta take that.
That's awesome. Water
Yeah.
fasting. I
Mm,
started water fasting when I was working with you
yeah.
years ago, and that was a game changer. And I did a bunch of testing with you years ago, and I just want to do a personal testimonial shout out that I was at a point when I met Sonya. I already knew her husband. Where I was running a yoga company. I was teaching a ton of classes a week, and I just launched my coaching business. This is like 8 years ago. And I used to be the Bunny. I was like running around. I was playing soccer. I was doing CrossFit. I was teaching like 10, 15 classes a week. I was doing literally everything. And I had so much energy for it. Like I never ran out of energy. And then one day out of nowhere, I could barely get up a flight of stairs. And I was like, something's seriously wrong with me. I thought maybe I had some sort of cancer or mono. And I went to doctors. You're fine, you're fine, you're fine. You just have low iron, but you have this deficiency you were born with. So just take some supplements, is basically what I was told. And I was like, no, no, this isn't it. My brain fog was horrible with my coaching clients. I wrote down literally everything. Like I was like really like writing everything down because I couldn't remember anything. And I was
Yeah.
like, something's seriously wrong with me. And then I remember Nick doing a presentation on what he does, what you guys do at Divine Elements. And I went in and I did my hormonal testing with you and everything else, bunch of blood work. And we saw that I had a lot of mercury in my blood. And I'm like, I don't eat fish. Like, I don't know where this is coming from. And then I did a detox. And that's when my body really started to wake up to a lot of symptoms that I couldn't even feel. And that's where a lot of the healing began. So I just want to do a shout out. It was really transformational for me in a big way.
Oh, thank you. I mean, you
Yeah.
did all the work. I really just kind of gave you the tools and you ran with it as you do with everything, right? So you did all that work, but it just goes to show sometimes we don't know the stressors our body is managing and dealing with. And so
Hmm.
when it comes to stress, there's definitely that emotional stress, but there's also physical and chemical stress that we may not be aware of. And especially in today's world for women, there's so many hormone disruptors in our environment. There's estrogen everywhere. So even pesticides, for example, that are sprayed on fruits and vegetables, they mimic estrogen in our body. So the body has to process that. So if our gut's not working well, our liver is a bit sluggish, we are then going to recirculate that estrogen, causing symptoms like heavy bleeds, cysts, fibroids, these kinds of things start to show up because of that extra thing in that bucket of stress. So I think when we're looking at the body, it's so important to look at all of those things, and that's going to play a role in our moods, in that brain fog or that lack of clarity when, our gut's not even working well and our hormones are off. So
Hmm.
everything's connected is basically the message. Yeah.
Totally. And I made so many changes since doing that work with you, like changed my makeup all
Yeah.
natural. Like I really shifted so many things because I had no idea. So I am so excited to read your book. Tell us a little bit. I know you have like some sort of gift for the listeners today. Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about what that is and also when people can pick up your book and how and all the things. And I'm going to be buying three of your books and I'm going to be gifting three books to listeners. When you write a review, you send it to me and you repost this episode, tagging myself and Sonya Jensen on social media. I will find one lucky winner within 30 days of this episode going live. So you're definitely going to want to win one, maybe as a gift for someone that you love, but definitely you're going to also want to pick it up yourself because you might not win.
No.
But still follow and all the things, you know?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so you could go to healyourhormonesbook.com and pre-order the book. And when you pre-order one book, you get a 7-day reset where you can start implementing tools and things like that right now for your hormones. And then you'll also get signed up to a 90-minute masterclass with myself. That will help you dive into those hormonal identities even further, and so that you can understand more tools to help your hormones understand your emotions, and then the relationship piece as well.
Oh my gosh, we've like, I feel like we could talk for like 5 hours on this, and I still want to know more. So definitely make sure to go to that landing page. The link is below in the show notes. Make sure to follow Sonya Jensen on social media and also check out their clinic in Vancouver, Divine Elements. I will also link that below. Grab a copy of her book or for every woman that you know, because every woman needs this. We all have things going on and we need to figure out how it's all connected. So thank you so much for being here. It's been so fun. And is there anything else you really want to share with the audience before we wrap up today?
I think the main thing really is what I alluded to in the beginning is that you're not alone. I think it can feel very lonely when you have these changes happening in your body and it feels chaotic and there's overwhelm from life. And most of us are carrying that same load, but maybe just it's manifesting in a different way. So if this episode does anything for you, is to give you that permission to speak up, to share your story, because every story is important.